So building on the whole topic of trust, as you know, Carolyn Bednar is on maternity leave. Denise is filling in and providing awesome support. And so Josh and I were talking with Denise, and she's got a lot of experience in the area of trust as well. So invited her to please share her perspective on one of the topics that we touched upon in the pre-work, which is the 5 dysfunctions of a team. So Denise, over to you.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Super excited to be here at GitLab. And I know I haven't met all of you, but I'm sure I will. This is week 3 for me. So early days in my GitLab journey, but love this model, the 5 dysfunctions of a team. And so hoping that you have all had the chance to watch the video by Pat and learn about his great work. He's written multiple books, but the 5 dysfunctions of a team is really the foundation of his work. If you haven't read the book, I definitely encourage you to do so. It's one of my favorites, and it's a really easy read, and it puts really all the concepts that we've learned so far in this class into a fable about a business leadership team. And so what we've heard this morning and on Monday is really around that foundation of a team being trust. And so with the absence of trust, it means that teams are unwilling to be vulnerable or human with each other. And that creates weakness in terms of teams that aren't able to trust one another, can't admit mistakes and weaknesses. And if they have this absence of trust, you feel your vulnerability will be used against you. And that means that teams may hesitate to ask for help. They might spend a lot of time managing behaviors and appearances and hide their mistakes from one another, and maybe receive feedback poorly. And so then productive feedback is stifled. So without that trust, it's really unlikely that those team members, your team will bring forward those innovative ideas and also challenge authority and challenge difference of opinion. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Once you have that trust, it's really about building on debate and healthy debate. And, if you have a fear of conflict, then you won't actually create that atmosphere within your team that really helps you learn as a group, learn to debate and learn from past mistakes, take action and tap into everyone's experience in your team. So this requires, to be able to debate, you have to have that healthy conflict. And healthy conflict means that it's not personal, it's not unproductive arguing. It's around really being able to get to the best possible outcome. So Pat Lencioni really outlines that debates can be extremely effective if the team is based on trust. And so your team is more likely to reach really optimal decision making if people disagree. And so encouraging the diversity of thought, really exercising your inclusive leadership skills will help conjure up this feeling of safety and this ability to bring forward a mixture of opinions and experiences so that you can make really good business decisions. And then the next step in terms of, this model is around commitment. And so teams need to be committed and on the same page in order to succeed. That's, table stakes, right? Like we have to show that commitment. But without you can only be committed if there's no ambiguity around goals, and you have to have that buy-in into the plan. So I use the term often, listen, challenge, and commit. And so you have that healthy debate, you challenge thinking, but ultimately you then commit, and you commit to the plan. And so dysfunctional teams fail to achieve commitment, and they kind of lumber from one decision to the next. Following on from commitment is the avoidance of accountability. So you'll see a dysfunctional team will really duck the responsibility of calling out each other, either peers or the senior leaders, on unproductive behavior or falling below standards. And so effective teams really hold each other accountable in order to correct problematic or counterproductive behavior and really maintain that high standard as a team. So all of these things are really foundational to then be able to focus on results. Without trust, without healthy debate, without that commitment and driving accountability in the team, it's very difficult to focus on outcomes and your key results. And if you have an inattention to results, it's dysfunctional because people then tend to focus on personal success, status, and ego before the team success. And so what this model talks about is really functioning teams are focusing on achieving results for the entire team. They have an ultimate mission, clear defined objectives, and they ask for help and they work with each other to achieve those results. So that's a little bit more kind of in depth about the model. Again, the book is fantastic. It really just, it's so true to life. And so if you haven't read it, please pick it up. Again, easy to find on Amazon, Audible. There's also the Table Group, which is an awesome resource online. And they have another tool that you could tap into, which is a kind of a team assessment that you can take to really get feedback from your team on, well, how do you think we as a team are performing against this model? You know, where do we have some gaps? Do we need to focus more on commitment as a team? Do we have an absence of trust? And then there's some tools also in the Table Group that can help you focus on closing those gaps. I have taught 5 dysfunctions at multiple companies and I'm happy to help facilitate. I'm sure Josh as well. Any kind of discussions around this book or this tool with you or your team. So we'll go to the next slide to really talk about, you know, what you're seeing. So I'm super curious, firstly, if this model resonates with you all, and then, you know, which of these dysfunctions maybe have you experienced in your own team here at GitLab or in other organizations? And what have you done to move that dysfunction into a function, into a high-performing team?
I'm going to take off the screen share so we can see everyone's faces.
I'm not shy to call on people either. So who's gonna be first?
Hey, Denise, I'll contribute here. So I think the dysfunction around, fear of debate can pop up here and there everywhere. I'm not saying it's super prevalent at GitLab or anywhere else, but it always comes up. And I think one of the reasons is because humans tend to we're emotional beings. So a lot of times the debate results in individuals holding on emotionally to their point of view. So the goal of the debate for a lot of people ends up being to prove my point, versus let's see how I can engage in meaningful dialogue. How can I listen, and how can I find out what are the weaknesses of my point of view? You know, like argue your weaknesses. And I think it's in our handbook somewhere where you should argue the straw person of your own argument. So I think that it's prevalent. I've experienced it. And again, it always goes back to emotionally holding on to what you want to be the result, right?
Yeah, so as a leader, how can you encourage that debate and help people kind of be comfortable with that, uncomfortableness really of their ideas being challenged?
I think it comes down to practice, right? And as trust is that foundation, so that's obviously important, facilitating the trust, but it's giving the opportunity for your team to collaborate together. And maybe it requires sometimes facilitation where you can ask the leading question that says like, hey, what data would help you be convinced that this is so? Like what data is missing? Or, and through facilitation and practice as a group, focus on the weaknesses in people's arguments and have just like a logical, calm conversation about those.
Yeah. Thanks, Jonathan.
Yeah, one other way that I try to get debate going is, when someone puts out an idea, go, okay, remember this is our goal. Does this get us there? And it kind of then opens the door to continue the conversation on top of that idea. So it's not throwing the idea out, it's allowing the conversation on top. And sometimes you realize, oh, that really wasn't the right direction. And then you redirect without offending the person that came up with the original idea.
Yeah.
I've worked in organizations and with leaders in the past that have created, in terms of like the level 4 of accountability, created a more of like a vacuum of accountability. So it was very hard for them to be held accountable to anything based on kind of the power dynamic between the individual contributors and that leader. So, and I really think the onus is on the leader to always make themselves available to be held accountable to things, even if, they're minute or relatively meaningless. But as long as you are creating that feedback loop, as a leader, I think that's extremely important.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. And one thing that really helps with that is creating that environment of trust and being vulnerable as a leader and human, right? Like we all make mistakes. There's always an opportunity for everyone, no matter what level of position you are in. And so that trust really helps then people feeling safe to call each other out or hold each other accountable, which I think it all goes back to that foundation principle, really.
Denise, I've also observed, to Jonathan's point, we're humans, but even as humans, like that don't want to debate, people have different comfort levels with debate. And so I know some of the Lencioni stuff talks about constructive versus destructive conflict. I think one of the things I've learned before is like, hey, don't assume that everybody defines constructive conflict in the same way. And so one of the things I've tried to do with my team is to try to avoid some past mistakes is, hey, have an open discussion, right? Talk about this model and just say, right, talk about the importance of conflict and debate and right, but also needing to make a decision, get to accountability, but then ask the team, right? Part of what we talked about last time is work and behavior norms. It's to say, all right, we're going to commit to constructive conflict. What does that look like? What does that not look like? And get some agreement on those, so that at least there's some explicit agreement of what that constructive conflict looks like, and then hold each other accountable to that.
Yeah, 100%. And not everyone, some people get triggered by the word conflict. And so really understanding your team and thinking about, what resonates, and is conflict the right word, or is debate or just discussion? It's really knowing your team and what fits as well.
So Denise, because you've taught this at other places, you seem like the right person to answer this question. This the pyramid looks eerily similar to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Meaning we can't really focus on transcendence of our being unless we've actually got, shelter, food, we're not in danger, et cetera. So is the idea that it really is, we're not going to be able to focus on results until we have trust down at the bottom? Is that a way to interpret the pyramid? I guess that's where I'm stuck.
So people can focus on results. It's just that you might not get the best results if you don't have those foundation building blocks below. Or you might focus on your own individual results versus the entire team's results. And so it's really just, to get the best results, the most functioning, high performing team, you need those building blocks. Just like, yes, it's similar. There's a lot of models with the triangle, right? But those foundational pieces that build you to get the very best at the top.
Got it. Thank you.
I have a question, if I could, looking at that second pillar around conflict and seeing that it says fear of, but then I guess expected or best result is demand debate. To me, now, this is just me personally and how I am, right? Definitely not afraid of debate. In fact, I probably need to regress on that in certain aspects of my life in general. So when I see that, I go, okay, time out. I don't know that that's necessarily the message that they want. So can you kind of can you unpack what the expected result is by demanding debate, what that means?
Yeah, so it's really about encouraging discussion and healthy debate around a subject, and really being inclusive, that everyone's ideas should be part of you making a decision and gaining commitment to a plan or to an idea. And so one of the things that I think is something to remember as a leader is that let your team bring up their points of view before you put yours in, right? So you're encouraging their perspectives and their ideas. That's about being inclusive, really recognizing that, encouraging that healthy dialogue. You could say dialogue versus debate is going to make the decision stronger because you've looked at the different perspectives and you don't get stuck in groupthink, or it's, I've decided as the leader that this is the best way to go. So it's really encouraging that dialogue. Does that help?
Yeah, I like what you said about healthy dialogue. I actually, that resonates more with me. So thank you.
Yeah, because conflict feels negative, right? It to a lot of people. Like there's, you can do all sorts of like social style assessments or personality assessments that might tell you I have a fear of conflict. And that's not, it's not conflict in terms of like the butting heads conflict. It's more around encouraging dialogue, having healthy debate so that you can get all ideas on the table and then move forward.
Thank you.
What can happen if you don't encourage that is like there's a meeting after the meeting. And so people don't bring up their points of view in the meeting because they're scared. They don't have trust. They feel like, oh, well, it doesn't matter what I say because so-and-so is going to trump my idea, whatever. And so then there's these people that are talking outside the meeting. That you want to avoid that. And so making sure that you're having that inclusive environment where people can have that healthy dialogue is what.
So that 5 minutes between meetings here is not for that. I'm kidding.
No,
you aren't on that call. Oh, my bad.
Thank you so much, Denise. I really appreciate you taking the time to share this. Very insightful. So thank you.
Yeah, happy to. And if you have any questions or want to chat about it more, please ping me.